Okay, we have begun
Mhm.
recording. Jen, do you want to kick us off, or I'm happy to do either one?
Sure. So let's take a roll call of commissioners who are present. Kathleen Corbett,
Here.
Bill William Perrette,
Here.
Jennifer Holm here. Russell Kimes will be absent due to a previous commitment. Just so everyone's aware, this meeting's being recorded. You can see it up on YouTube. And what our goal of the agenda today is to work with you from 8:30 to 9:30. Thank you for sending in. I think we briefly met when I crashed your meeting. Uh, sorry about that, but I smelled an opportunity.
Thank you for
Uh,
that.
uh, to go through the revisions that you had done to the article that is basically the Conservation Commission, just to give you some ideas just about the process so you have an idea of what comes next. In this group, we will go through that article, make suggestions, understand your perspective about why you wanted to change certain things. And then what happens is we will put it forward to the larger CRC group for review as well and input. After that, I promise that if we have made an update or change to what you had originally wanted, we will, of course, send you the article. And you can also, by the way, find these things online. As we're updating this, it'll probably be discussed at a larger meeting. As Kathleen alluded to, we're scheduling more of those. And then what happens is on May 4th, a report will be sent to the town council for their review of all the changes. They will also hold public meetings, and then it'll come back potentially to us to make some tweaks or interesting due diligence or research to be done. And then it will go forward to potentially be put, if it's substantive, on the ballot for the election. So this is like phase one. Obviously, as we go through the other ones, and if there's any update or changes, I'm happy to let you all know now that I have your emails. So that'll be great. Thank you.
Terrific.
I have one quick question. You said it'll go on the ballot. Is I assume as one item, the entire town charter is a yes, no binary. It's not bits and pieces.
We
Well,
there.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Kathleen. No, go ahead.
Okay, so the charter, as we said, is reviewed every 10 years. And if there are any substantive changes, as Jennifer mentioned, those would go on the ballot. So, as an example, 10 years ago on the ballot was, for instance, should the chairman of the Board of Finance be the first selectman, or should it be an independent? And so that specific line item was a ballot item. Yes, no. And then there's also in every situation, even if we change a sentence or modify this, change update a word or two, that also goes on the ballot. But that is just sort of like an item that says you accept the changes that have made, and they're basically not substantive. So everything goes on the ballot if it even if we just make minor changes.
Okay.
I just have a question to start off, if we could.
Sure.
Earlier said that the committee, your group doesn't do much, and I was just wondering why. Is that not enough need, or is that something to do with the charter itself, um, or just
Why don't you
wasn't sure.
describe what, like, that's a great question, Bill. And, maybe Tom Cronin, would you be kind enough to just kind of review what the Conservation Commission does?
That's maybe a better question. Great.
Yeah, I can literally read it from the articles, and that is the Conservation Commission was created to keep an inventory defining the town's open space and to evaluate those lands for their proper and potential use. We will also seek to advise in the development, management, protection, and conservation of our natural resources and to coordinate activities with existing town committees, commissions, and departments and with other conservation bodies. So we do perform that task currently, but I think Tom was suggesting that um, we could probably do more if, in fact, the articles reflected that sort of mission. Am I right, Tom?
Yeah, that seems like a relatively straightforward task. I think there was some sort of survey of open space that was done many years ago, and not an awful lot since then. There was one since I've joined, there was one sort of substantive thing that we did, which was, voting on whether or not a new development would contribute money or land to the open space. And they had said they wanted to contribute like, a 10-foot by 20-foot piece of land between two buildings they were building to the open space. And we said, that's kind of silly. We'd rather the money. That was like sort of a decision. But we had this big plan that was paid for by the town to drive some of our sustainability efforts. And it was agreed to, but not a lot of follow-up has happened. And I think that's in part because there isn't really anyone other than planning and zoning who's very busy, whose responsibility is to follow up and make sure that stuff happens. We are bronze level Connecticut sustainability, and we could be silver just by submitting some documents to the state, I believe. But it's not really anybody's responsibility to do that. It just seems in today's day and age, with energy being such an important issue, that we could do more. We could keep the town apprised of all of the various energy sources and how they're performing as part of our survey. For example, I go into South School and I see it up there, but nobody has consolidated a report that's being published in the South School monitors, the East School monitors, the high school. Anyway, there's stuff to be done within the realm of conservation. I'm eager to do it and would love to spend time doing things that are more than just indicating that, we'd like a contribution of capital instead of a 10 by 20 piece of open space. And Tom Cronin is actually doing that to some degree already by figuring out how do we fund our open space budget. So, there's stuff we can do that's more substantive, and I think under Tom's leadership, we're trying to do that. But a clarification of the charter could give us more direction.
So if you don't mind me asking, in Irwin Park, I've just driven by it, I've seen it from far. The building was knocked down, and there's some suggestion that other things are going to happen there. That's not something, because that's open space, or at least I thought it was. Is that something that you all take a look at and people people ask you, is it a good idea?
I'll say we haven't, but Tom can say if we should or will.
Yeah, I would suggest that we should, but really there's no kind of process right now in place for, parks and recreation, for instance, to do that kind of outreach. So it's up to an individual within another department or within our commission to do the outreach. Again, that process doesn't quite exist right now, but that would definitely, to some extent, fall within our purview to make a kind of recommendation on that open space.
Good.
Got it. So on that note, why don't we go to article, and Kathleen, I think you're going to, since you're the host, you want to share. I think to maximize time on the articles, you had no changes on article sections 1, 2, 3, but going to sort of Bill's question. Thanks. Section 4, 11.4, powers and duties, is where you made some really great substantive changes. So do you want to sort of walk us through those and take us through them?
I was just wondering if there's a screen share. Oh, yes.
Ta-da!
Oh, it looks like that's even a document maybe I created.
It is.
That is. Can I, before we get started, can I just talk a little bit about the process of how we arrived here? I'll be very quick. We started talking about possible changes to the articles. Tom, I'm guessing in our November meeting, when we first sort of got word that there was a possibility that the charter would be open. So we discussed it thereafter in just about every regular meeting we've had. And we also established a committee within the commission to address the charter revisions. That committee was made up very quickly of just Tom and I. And Tom did a lot of the work going forward on that. And we also shared all of our ideas with the commission. And we actually brought this document to the full commission in our March 12th meeting for approval. So this has been approved by the Conservation Commission unanimously. But go ahead.
Okay, so C11-4, the change is in blue. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We would like to advise on sustainability, resilience, and environmental stewardship. It doesn't actually give us any powers. It just suggests a little bit about what we should be doing. And resilience is so critical these days with the storms that are coming through. And I think we took the opportunity with Superstorm Sandy to make a lot of upgrades. There's a lot of power lines that have been put underground. The town thinks a lot about this, and we would just like to serve as a formal advisory body on some of these issues.
Okay.
Can I ask a question to both Toms? Tom, tell me, Tom, I know Tom Cronin, the other Tom, spell your last name for us.
Herman.
Herman.
Herman. Okay, thank you, Tom. And to what extent have you taken your current ordinances, specifically with respect to Conservation Commission? Is this wording come from an existing ordinance?
You mean the blue?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
So, the blue is stuff that I wrote.
Yeah.
My overall view on, did you see, I did write a little sort of speaker's notes that suggested, one, that we should pull any of our legal wording from state level and reflect it in the charter. And the second thing I suggested was that we take anything from the ordinances that belonged in the charter and move them into the charter. So those are sort of two technical things that result in no change, just
Right.
clarification, and an opportunity to see if there's any conflict between state law, ordinance, and charter. And then the things in blue are things that I suggested, which would be a change.
Okay. Okay. Whatever is reflected and changed in the charter should also be updated in the ordinance, because the ordinance enables you to, more than every 10 years, if there's a modification needed, that's where you would do it. And so just keep that in mind. And oftentimes we don't repeat. So if it's in state statutes, you refer to state statutes, because that can change too within the 10 years between now and the next time the charter is opened.
Yeah.
Same thing with ordinances. So when I'll ask these questions as we go through it, I'll say, should this be in the ordinance? Is this in the state statutes? And so it will reflect whether or not what we decide to incorporate into the charter, which is sort of 10 years, no change.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the intention with this piece in blue. I think that should be a 10-year commitment from us. And I would also just say this was all designed to reflect how things are configured for the other commissions. And what you've indicated as should be the case, in fact, is not always the case, which is fine. It's really hard to keep this stuff consistent. It might not be the case because the charter was done and then the state ordinances changed and it affected stuff that was in the charter, or the town charter changed and it affected stuff in the charter instead of the ordinances, and so they become out of sync. But there's a lot of stuff in the other commissions that are at the charter level.
Okay.
Okay, doke. So going to the section?
Yep. So A4, again, it just says make an annual report. And I think it should be more specific insofar as it should include an environmental. We should prescribe a little bit more what that should include. And here in particular, as I said, some of the key metrics on energy use, emissions, waste diversion, canopy coverage, all of these things should be done on an annual basis, and we should do it. Most of it's not that hard. A lot of the data already exists. In theory, we're supposed to be turning in an annual report. I don't know what we have turned in, but that's kind of part of the work. And personally, I am super into data. And so I like the idea of making the town aware of how fabulous a job we are doing at getting solar on all the schools, for example. But what does that mean from a town perspective overall? Let's report on it.
I commend that. I think that's great. I think it also needs to be in the ordinance. I would not, this would be this would be an example of shouldn't be in the charter. And because, 8 years from now, for instance, maybe there wouldn't be any relevance to, I'm going to make this up, but um, uh, waste diversion rates. Yeah, just say it hypothetically. So I think those are where you have more of an ability to modify it in an ordinance. And as you rightly said, throughout the charter, where we have different boards of commissions, will say, make an annual report to the town council. That's it. We don't tell it what should be in it. That's for you guys to decide. And as established by either your own commission's bylaws, which you can also adopt, or specifically an ordinance. The easiest way is to adopt them as your bylaws.
Kathleen,
No.
maybe this is more for us rather than the
Yeah.
Toms, but um, so these reports are made by these different groups to the town council, and earlier, like we've been talking for several months now, the Toms really don't report to anybody, right? So you make this report to the town council, and what do they? I mean, there doesn't seem to be anything in the documents that says in our documents that says they've got to do something with it. I mean, what about if the report came in? So I'm just trying to understand from the town standpoint. We all know in business if someone went to the CEO and said the house is on fire, he or she's got to do something about it. I mean, I guess the town council presumably might do something about it, but so is there something we should be dealing with, separately on that to sort of
Uh,
give some sense of who's in charge?
I agree.
Right. Well, the town council is a legislative body. So if the Conservation Commission in its annual report to the town council makes a recommendation, the body that, if it is a legislative change, if it's a ordinance change, they're in charge of making that ordinance change, and it requires public hearings and so forth. So, in this particular case and in all others where there's a report to some other body, the onus to do something about that, specifically if it's a legislative change, would be the town council.
So should we maybe, this is great what the guys wrote here, but should we, you know, ask for there be a conclusion? I mean, is that the punchline? Like if it was an audit report, public company or even a town, no material weaknesses, you would be fine. If there was, if you had a significant problem or material weakness, you would have to state that. And then presumably somebody reading it would do something about that. Maybe we should build out the charter or the ordinances with something that at least says when you report, you've got to call out if there are any issues. That's not the right terminology, but because I could see this being, thank you very much for the report and file it, right? Not everybody on the town council is, I'm sure they're all interested in conservation, but some of them are probably more interested.
We'll take that up because it's a general comment, I think, about all
Yeah.
boards and commissions. So let's move on. Yep.
I think
But I just want, before we go on, Bill, I agree with you, and maybe this is we have to make a list of advisements to town council, and this is sort of, as to use the terminology, a finding that we have done almost in going through many of these articles,
Right.
and that the hierarchy and who reports to whom, and let's say we heard just anecdotally from Chris Shipper that you guys ask for money and constantly get turned down, that there's no funding, where do you escalate these issues, Conservation Commission, because you can't do your projects, right? And so I think we're happy to share that language Bill, you and I can work on it as the advisement, and we can share it with the Conservation Commission once we finish it. Because just for your edification, everyone, this is sort of something we're finding is a common theme. Yeah.
Good.
I want to recognize that we have 9 minutes.
Oh,
Um,
dear. Well,
And
we can go a
I
little
also
longer.
just want to say, first, as far as whether this belongs in the charter or the ordinance, I trust your judgment and encourage you to push as much towards charter as possible on anything that you can, but know that you guys will make the right decisions. I believe sunlight is the best disinfectant or motivator. And so number 5 says the same thing as number 4, but make it available to the town. So if there's things as a result of this sunlight that the town wants to do, the people know, and the people can request that it happen. And then 6 is something that we already do, so it's really just putting it more at the charter or ordinance level that we should continue to do some minor publishing about these items. And we're doing a good job of it, and we've got someone on the Anne is on the commission, and she's super into that. So that's 6. And basically, B2 is the same thing. It just says some of the ways that we should be thinking about reporting. It just takes the old version in red and sort of brings it to 2026. And number 4 is, again, an attempt to be a little bit more specific, but not give us any power. Here it could be dictate, but instead it's just recommend. And I think it's important for us to be required to recommend based on our work and our experience and our expertise, some things that could change within the town. Everywhere I've made an effort to make this as palatable as possible to everybody.
And Tom, just for clarification on the red for example number 2, you said have taken the old language and updated it. The old language from what? Your ordinance, right? Because it's not in the charter.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we have nothing in the charter as far as I can tell. The
Nothing.
charter says read the ordinance
Yeah. Right.
in not so many words.
Right.
I really recommend that you guys read my speaker's notes because it really explains a lot of this stuff. The next one is 6. This would be again, just putting a little bit more specific tasks on us. We should recommend when there are sustainability initiatives. The POCD happened. We weren't involved as far as I know. And I think we should be because, for example, there are recommendations in there, some of which have been done. And if we just filed the fact that they were done with the state, then we would go from a bronze to a silver rating and some of the benefits. So the rest of the green is stuff that's pulled into the charter from the ordinances, which you guys will decide where you want it. Number 10, we would like to be able to apply for grants around conservation and sustainability. I don't see any reason why we can't really today, but it's not written that we can. And so we'd like to be able to do that. And in some cases, when we're applying for these grants, we are required to, the applying body is required to have authorization from the town to do the application. So this would help us in that regard. And we already ask for a budget and sometimes get it and sometimes don't. But this just says, number 12, we may ask for a budget. It doesn't give us one, it just says we can ask.
Okay.
And continuing along, the rest of this is all just stuff that I think should be pulled from the ordinances into the charter. And as I said before, I trust y'all's judgment. The more, the better, as far as we're concerned, for the very reason, Kathleen, that you said some of it shouldn't necessarily be in the charter because it can't be changed for 10 years. That's why we want it in the charter. You guys know best for sure. Continuing along.
That's as far as I have.
All right. Gosh, I was succinct.
2 questions for you. Thank you for this. This is great. This is fantastic. Appreciate that. 2 questions that actually are in the charter that we'd love your opinion on in terms of potential change. One is, and this came from Chris Schipper, actually, recommendation that the Conservation Commission, which currently has 5 members, to take that number up to 7. Your comments on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. I think it's a very good recommendation. As you heard me mention, when I talk about the committee involved in making changes to the articles, there were just 2 commission members as part of that committee, and that's because three would have made any one of our meetings an irregular meeting. So the idea of having additional commissioners allows us to have additional commissioners on committees without having that irregular meeting, and also probably allows for greater engagement with volunteers that might participate at that committee level too, because we're becoming more and more active on the committee level, getting work done for the commission outside of our regular meetings. So I do like the recommendation.
And
Okay.
what do you think of going from 2 years to 3 years as a term?
I would
Go ahead,
jump
Tom.
in on that, and because I know Tom and I think it's a good idea, but I'm not sure it's allowed at the state level.
We'll check that.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'd be in favor of 3 years if in fact
If it's permissible.
it's permissible.
And you actually sent up here yet, but it was up there. The state statute, the Connecticut state statute was, you gave a number there. Is that the source that we should go to see what the limitation is on? Okay, that's good. Okay.
Just let me know if you want me to provide that to you more explicitly. I can pull it up. I
Okay.
don't remember where I heard that or if I read it.
Okay. That's fine. If you happen to have the source, that'd be great. Yeah, just send it to us. That'd be wonderful. I think that's all I had.
If
Anybody
we
else?
do change from 2 to 3, then we need to change the how and when they're selected. 'Cause,
Correct.
yeah, you guys know all that stuff, of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, we would all do that.
Great.
Terrific.
So the next step is we'll go through this and make some modifications. And then thanks for the 2 year to 3 year. We'll look at that. We'll change 5 to 7. That doesn't seem to be an issue. And we'll change, obviously, looking at that will be a recommendation to the larger group that we would make. And then in turn, we'll come back to you.
Terrific.
I'll just make one comment about being careful about committees. We're 11-member body. We have committees. We still post those meetings, agendas, etc. So going to 7 and allowing you to get a committee, for instance, of 3, you still have to go through FOIA. So it doesn't alleviate the situation that you're consulting with us about. So just be mindful of that.
Right. Understood.
I would close my comments by saying thank you. I know what you guys are doing is a lot of work, and you have a lot of different people that want things out of it. And the other thing that I would say is please consider what our charter says with regards to other commissions as you decide what should be in the charter versus in the ordinances. Thank you very much for your time.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Jennifer.
All right. I think Andrew was, oh, there he is. Great. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I'll find my town treasurer stuff.
All right.
I guess it's good I joined early.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Sue, I know you're still on. You're welcome to stay, but if you we're going to be moving on to the town treasurer article. Good to see you.
Okay, thank you.
Just for if you'd like to stay, you're welcome. I'm
Thank
not-
you.
All right. So Andrew, how are you?
Good.
Okay. Super. All rightio. So let's share again. All right. Super. Can everyone see?
Yes.
All right. So I think just to sort of level set, the goal of this came from Article 2, which had a couple lines in it in the first section that was basically solely related to the town treasurer. There was also interwoven into Article 5 various points about the treasurer, but it was felt that potentially being a little bit more explicit was going to then also support the work as to even with or without Andrew, that the town treasurer would be doing on an ongoing basis and what their basically powers are and duties. So just for edification, um, we lifted Article 2/1, the first and second last sentences. And basically that was the start of the articles. Then what we also did was also took, based upon a lot of Andrew, your testimony, your input to the wider commission, and broadened out what those are in terms of your overall duties of what the town treasurer does for the town, and did not go into the step-by-step detail that you do, i.e., how often or what you look at precisely, but to give at least some layer of what your overall powers and duties are. Andrew, anything you want to add?
No, I think you summed it up.
Okay. So why don't we go through one by one and get any comments? And Andrew, if there's anything else you would like to add I know at one point you had talked about after your bigger testimony that you might want to, you've had some more reflection, you can. I know that there was a discussion at the end of that previous public meeting, so, okay? All right.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, one of, and I don't know if it should be in this article or in a different article, but I do think the treasurer needs to be added into sections of the charter where, reports are distributed, for example, by, say, the audit committee to town council and board of finance and board of selectmen. I do think the treasurer should be included as a recipient of various reports just to ensure that I have full awareness of various issues, especially ones that impact the finances of the town, because I do think there's a slight gap. I think some people voluntarily will share that information with me, but it isn't always the case. And so I think if we mandate that certain committees and boards provide reporting to certain elected officials, that the treasurer then should be listed among those. So again, that might be better addressed as part of a different section or in those relevant sections wherever a different body is providing reporting. Um, but that's an area that I think needs some attention.
Okay.
I'll also just say, Andrew and I had the opportunity to go through this same document, and so my comments will reflect comments that I had shared with Andrew previously. So
Okay.
I'm going to share it with everybody here as we go through it.
Super. So I think any questions or any input onto number 1?
So I just think as we will take this document and send it up to the full commission too, where the language is, and we'll see this on the second point on terms of office. Let's put the language that it currently exists, like elected, it's currently elected position. And then for discussion by the full commission, just if we could just put in brackets, or appointed, and just say that's the discussion that we'll take, but it should remain as elected on this document right here. And then if you want to put, or not say anything, but put in brackets or appointed, because that's going to be part of our discussion of the full commission. And then the only other part on that section 1, as Andrew and I spoke about, that I wasn't aware that there is a treasurer of the school district. And we talked about that, and I guess that's language that's from the general statutes. It's not the case where we have a separate school district or a treasurer's school district. It's not in any other points in the charter, and I just recommended that it be taken out. That if there was some issue that is subject to the general statutes, let it be so. But it doesn't need to be in the charter because it does not apply to our town and how we operate.
So do you, just to make this easier, do you have a marked up copy of what and you
I
can
do.
put that?
I was hand marked the old fashioned way. So, but
Oh, all right.
I can do that. I
So
can go in and edit
So
this.
you want to strike this?
Yes, please. Yes.
Oops, let me just do. Okay.
And again, I think the idea was, from my understanding, the statutes speak to treasurers and town clerks essentially have whatever duties they perform for the town, they also do for the school district. They kind of are unique in that way that they kind of cross over that invisible fence, so to speak, between the town and the schools in a way that other officials don't in the town. So I guess I just want to be clear, Kathleen, though, that you agree that the treasurer does have the authority to act as both the treasurer of the town and the school district. You just don't want it explicitly written here because it's already
subject to it at
statute.
the state statutes. Yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
we don't have a treasurer of the school district, so.
Right. Well, I am the treasurer of the school district.
Exactly. So,
Right.
right. So it doesn't have to.
It's not a separate person. Yeah.
No. Right.
Okay. All right. So, and then Bill, any comments on number one?
I just don't know why we would put in currently elected or I mean, I'm just trying to understand that because I mean,
Well,
if
you'll
we
see
if we decide to change it,
yeah.
then I think we should
You
rewrite
can
this.
leave it as is, but my point was when you get down to the second item, terms of office, it's not a 4-year term right now. So put it what it is, which is a 2-year term. And if you want to make a recommendation, this body make a recommendation to the full commission that it go to 4, put that in brackets.
Yeah. No, if it's the term, I agree. I thought you were talking about putting the word currently in the first paragraph.
No. I said if you want to just put in brackets or appointed, this is where you put it in, but it's just for a discussion point.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
I would just change the 4 to a 2, but know that we are going to be taking up to the full commission.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. The town treasurer shall be an annual compensation. Any points on number 3?
So I did question this with Andrew about the performance of duties. I was like, the performance of duties. Then he pointed out to me, yeah, that's what exists for the town
clerk.
So, it's to make it consistent. That's fine. That was more my question than anything else. I did not. Why did I underline or engage in any business with a town that could create a conflict of interest? What was that from the town clerk as well?
Yep.
Andrew, what was our conversation about that? Was that just being?
Yeah, that's from the town clerk, and that's pretty standard throughout for people who are elected.
Officers. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, everyone is an officer. That's another
Right.
issue.
Right. Right.
Everyone's an officer here, not just a certain group. But because Andrew also works outside, and we also have the same language for the town clerk.
Right.
Now, there was a bit of tweaking that I did, and I have shared that with the other group. I think there was a good suggestion, and maybe it was from you, Bill, about cleaning up some of this. It was a little muddled. It was very wordy. So we basically cleaned up as defined in the town code of ethics, but so it's consistent.
Right.
It was like something like therefore, as of da 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 da. So we
that was in the town clerk's section. Was that
and that's been sent over to them.
Yeah. Okay.
One question I had, does the first selectman also have, I guess I would think any paid or compensated official, elected official would need this type of verbiage in their relevant section, right? For consistency.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And again, I think the idea of that language is more about me doing other business with the town that would create a conflict, not necessarily having an outside um, job that doesn't interact with my town work, right? I just want to make sure that we're not saying here that a part-time person elected to the town is not allowed to have any outside income or anything, right?
I think I mean, I would assume that almost every all the elected officials have a job, maybe with the exception, well, I mean, there are individual people who have jobs where they don't get paid for, right? They're stay-at-home fathers, stay-at-home moms, or whatever the case may be. But um, elected officials can work in business like you do, and I don't think there's any restriction anywhere in the charter on that. There is a question. I mean, we do have employees who have second and third jobs, which we probably need to think through a little bit, but that's slightly different.
Yep.
Right, because I would argue so long as that outside business activity doesn't conflict with their duties, they shouldn't be restricted from having, especially if they're a part-time official, right? Because I certainly don't think someone can do this job or live in New Canaan on a part-time salary from the town, which kind of is why I have an outside position. Whereas I understand, obviously the town clerk and first selectman are full-time jobs.
Right.
So, perhaps, someone could live here on those salaries. But anyway, I just wanted to make that clear that what we're saying here is not banning outside positions. We're simply saying that, I can't essentially provide, consulting services to the town and earn an additional salary from the town in addition to my treasurer's salary. And
But
and that's
you raised an interesting point. I'm thinking about Wilton.
right. Well, in Wilton, the CFO there, or their former CFO, had a second full-time, she was a full-time employee in Wilton, had a second full-time job in Wyoming. Um, and I believe her employment contract did permit her to have outside employment, but she needed to provide notification and get approval, I think, from the first selectman in that case, because that person reported to the first selectman. Um, so so it is a different situation because obviously I'm not, the treasurer is not a full-time job. Um,
Mhm.
but again, I think, and I don't know where that's cared for in terms of outside business activities, if that's an internal policy, but I guess that one of the challenges is as an elected official, right? I'm not necessarily, um, I'm not subject, I guess, to necessarily all the same policies as a hired employee would be, right? Like I don't receive benefits or anything like that. So there are some differences, but again, I
Yeah.
wasn't sure where that should get cared for. I just wanted to make sure, really, my focus in this section was there's been a lot of, I guess, back and forth over the years as to who is the approving authority for setting salaries. And the statutes, I believe, make it clear that the legislative body of the town, and then in towns that have a different budget authority, usually also need that budget authority. But our own legal counsel has said the town council is both the legislative body and budget authority in New Canaan, since they have the final vote on all appropriations of the town. The Board of Finance recommends they don't approve appropriations. But there's been a lot of controversy on this, and I do think all compensated officials should have their salary set by an independently elected body, just like Congress sets the salaries for all the executive branch officers of the federal government, right? Like it should be the other elected body providing checks and balances. You create potential conflicts of interest when you have an appointed body, especially one that's appointed by the Board of Selectmen, setting the selectmen salaries, which is, unfortunately how some people think the process needs to work. So anyway, I think that line there about it being set by the town council will help clear up who should be approving the salary setting.
Okay. But I bring up, I need to talk to Cheryl Jones to ask her some questions about some details about how you're qualified. You're obviously, do you, just out of, no personal, but do you receive like a 401k from the town?
I do participate in the
1099.
457
The
plan,
457? Okay.
which is available to all full and part-time employees. I am
Yep.
a W-2 employee of the
Okay.
town.
Yep. Okay.
I'm not like a 1099 contractor. So,
Right, no, I agree. I agree. I
yeah.
get that. I
But
get
but
that.
but I don't receive medical, dental, like I don't, I believe full-time employees and full-time elected officials like the first selectman and town clerk do receive full medical, dental, other benefits.
Yes,
Um,
you brought up a good point because you're essentially part-time, and so
right.
I
So I
want to
do
know on
participate in
that.
the 457. That's, I think, the only thing I participate in beyond, you know, just receiving the salary that's been set by the council.
The only reason why I bring this up is that Cheryl and I worked on much better definition of full-time, part-time, and seasonal workers
Hmm.
and some of the impacts to them regarding benefits as well as then dismissals. So thank you for reminding. I'm going to go check that. Thank you.
Sure.
I would imagine the town council must, I mean, ask the first selectman, I mean, maybe it's not working that way, but it should. I mean, if they're going to do something on salary, they should ask other people in town. I mean, certainly ask Cheryl Jones, what she thinks, right? I mean, you have to,
Well, I agree, although I do think for elected officials, right, it should be an independent set of eyes that's assessing the nature of the work and the responsibilities.
no,
And
I agree with that, but
you know,
if you're going to have a board of directors, town council, whatever you want to call it, they should get input by, from specialists, and Cheryl at a minimum is the specialist in this area.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, and I will say I do believe over the years the council, and maybe Kathleen can speak to this as a former councilman, but I know that council members do reach out to various officials. I know they've reached out to me, to ask me questions about what my
Sure.
job duties are so that they could develop an appropriate compensation level for the position. Um, and so whenever they've come to me with questions, I always provide answers. Um, you know, but that's where I think it needs to be an independent body. It creates conflicts of interest, I think, if you have a body that's appointed by one body setting that body's salary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why I think that's an important topic that not only impacts the treasurer, but all the compensated officials. And maybe that needs to be a defined term, compensated officials. And then there's something about that in here.
Yeah.
But if I can just see two things on that section on compensation. I don't know if this is our entry into this, the ultimate budget authority. I don't think the word ultimate is necessary there. I think that's the only one that exists in this particular.
Sure.
So I don't think ultimate is necessary. And then maybe it's an elephant in the room, and not necessary to the town treasurer's role, but I don't know if does this language exists in other town officers and other boards, et cetera, on the engage in any business with the town that could create a conflict of interest as defined by the town code of ethics. Does that exist elsewhere?
Yes.
It does. Okay. Okay. So, for instance, Board of Selectmen,
Right. Yep.
it's there. Okay. Just
Yep.
want to make sure. Okay. Thank you.
So just for some edification, there was some reuse of because of Andrew's role and his, let's say, term of being elected, etc. There was reuse of language that's also used throughout the charter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
And I just want to confirm, Jennifer, though, it says it says in these different sections, it says could create a conflict of interest versus does create a conflict of interest. I don't know if Kathleen, is that what you were getting at, or
I was
and I
more.
don't know who would decide that either, who would
Yeah.
decide whether something's a conflict or not.
The ethics
Um,
board does.
Yeah.
okay.
These conflicts. Yeah.
Okay. So we go to custodian of funds.
So excuse me, Andrew. I'm sorry for saying that. Andrew and I talked about this, and we actually thought this should come out. And here's my concern, and I shared with Andrew, keep a record of all financial transactions made by the town, including bond issues, payments, et cetera. The treasurer shall have access to all financial systems, and that's fine by me to ensure that all are maintained. And I just, sort of, if this were me, to be responsible for the Munis system or the other systems. My name is not on the contract with those systems. That just, I think, puts a burden on whoever serves as town treasurer to be the record keeper and the systems maintainer and all that stuff. And I just don't recommend that as being embodied in the charter.
Well, it is in the state statutes.
The word custodian of funds, but this language directly, they shall
And,
keep records of all financial transactions.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, just to be clear, it doesn't say that it doesn't define the treasurer as the custodian. I think that's the word we had thought
No,
was
it's in the
applicable.
statutes. I'll show it to you where it is.
Okay, because I know 7-80 through 7-86 is kind of where it talks about keeping a record of all payments of the town, for example, all receipts and payments of the town, which the town attorney years ago, Ira, explained to me when I asked about that statute when I first got elected. He said, "Oh, well, that's the system of record, the town's accounting system, and the
yeah,
bank statements are where those records are kept." Because I asked him, do I need to keep a separate set of
yeah,
records?
yeah.
And that's where he had said, no, you don't need to, Andrew. That set of records are the records. And the town finance department, as the accounting team, they're the ones who are putting things into those records. I
Right,
review the records.
right.
And that's where I do think maybe we need to flesh this out a little bit more. I didn't say necessarily that we should eliminate the whole section. I thought we could, when you suggested, Kathleen, consolidating or taking certain things,
Yeah, you
I
can
do think that second sentence is especially important because even if I'm not the
the financial
person.
system having access. Yeah, but
Right, because I'm not necessarily creating all the records, but I definitely need to be able to review the records. And when residents ask me for information about those records, I want to be in a position to answer their questions and provide those records upon request. And right now, it's not 100% feasible for me to do that based on the current access that I have set up.
I understand that point. It was really the first section about you'll keep a record. That's very arcane, and I wouldn't personally want that responsibility of keeping all the records. And even though that you've got legal advice that says, "Oh, no, no, that's not really you," so it shouldn't be referenced there because somebody might point out if, for whatever reason, our systems failed in some way. Well, who's responsible? Go to the charter. It's the treasurer, and you're not keeping a separate set of books, and you are responsible under this language to keep that financial records that exist under, and that shouldn't be your responsibility. It's
Well,
not.
I actually don't read this as keeping a separate set of books.
Well, I hope so. I don't either. That's why I don't think it should be there.
But I
Or
believe,
should we better describe how it actually works in terms of like referencing the current like way that books and records are kept? And again, I don't know if the CFO role or
And
finance
I don't
department
think
are
it's
being called
yeah.
out in the charter in other sections, but maybe we describe their participation in
All of
maintaining the
this
records.
again subject to statutes. I would just reference general state statutes.
so in the general statutes, it does say he's the custodian of funds. I'll
Yeah,
find that.
great,
Yeah,
great, and that's where it belongs in the statutes.
in the general statutes.
Yes.
Right. Um, I read this as that he maintains and ensures that there are a record that is kept by the town of all the financial transactions.
Yeah. Do you have a voice on what system is used, Andrew?
But you're talking about a system. I think when
Records, financial records, keeping a record of all financial transactions.
So we do keep bank statements technically
our
are the
financial record.
official
Yeah.
records because those are the actual monies leaving, entering and leaving accounts, while the Munis system is showing the accounting behind those numbers and showing like what line items in the budget those amounts are being debited from. but I think holistically, both the accounting records and the bank records are the financial records.
Yeah.
Um, and to your, I mean, I did not have I was not consulted when the town decided to go with, for example, Munis many years ago. That decision, I believe, was made before I became treasurer, or around the time I became the treasurer in 2013. A decision had already been made to go to Munis, and that's where we've been. But right, I don't have necessarily currently a say. I do think the treasurer should be consulted though, on what system
Then
is
who do you think
used.
should be the keeper of the records?
Well, I guess that this is where I'm also curious because I know the town clerk's office is the official keeper of records. And I guess, are we saying that the
And who's the
treasurer
so 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 so
separately keeps financial records? Like, I guess what I want to ensure is that we have one golden source of records. I don't want to have the treasurer have separate set of records and then the
but
finance department has
I
their
think
own records. Like, I think
right,
we
but
need to have
who
one set.
ultimately owns the financial statements of the town?
CFO.
That's the question that's being asked here.
Yeah.
And I think that I need to be able to review
But if
and
you're custodian of the funds, isn't Andrew then the ultimate financial statement owner or keeper, I should say, not owner, but keeper, ensuring that they're maintained?
I don't think so, but that's my interpretation.
Yeah,
which is why I
I
think
just had to take a call for a minute, but which line you looking at?
we're talking about section 5, a custodian of funds.
Right,
We're having a discussion about who ultimately is the keeper. And Bill, you'll understand this from your audit experience
right.
of the financial records of the town. If the treasurer is the town custodian of town funds, if you were to audit the town, let's say, as you do, or whoever does, ultimately, if there's records missing, right? Let's say bank statements are missing, who is the ultimate responsibility of that have in your viewpoint?
Yeah,
So I think that's what this is trying to establish.
yeah, yeah. It's I mean, it really goes to what the town's record keeping um protocols are, and this is pretty pervasive. I mean, it's really not a person, it's a process, right? And it's financial systems, it's books and records, it's stuff that's stored off site, and so on. And I think that the treasurer should be able to review to make sure that all the records are in fact maintained. Because in theory, the treasurer would be the only one that really understands what all the records should be. But it would seem to me there should be a record retention policy for the town. And
Right.
I
And
don't
I
know if
don't
they
know
have
the
one.
ordinances, but there might be.
Yeah.
Andrew, do you know if there's an ordinance on that? I'm sure there is.
I don't know if there's an ordinance. I'm pretty sure there's some kind of record retention policy that HR might have, or that Claudia might have, given that she maintains a lot of records for the town. But I'm pretty sure she doesn't maintain financial records, which is why I do think, you know, it may be worthwhile describing here, or if there is an opportunity to put in an ordinance, that could
The
also
bylaw.
make sense.
Bylaw.
But right, or yeah, but I would say that ultimately the treasurer, a set of financial transactions and financial records needs to be maintained, and I do think the treasurer needs to ensure that those records are maintained. The treasurer isn't responsible, I think, for creating that separate set of records. I think it's a group effort to gather and maintain those records. My only point is the treasurer, as an senior elected official, needs to be in a position to be able to have access to all of those records. And if there is a record missing, right, if I see that there is something missing, then I want to make sure that I have the power to fix that and to ensure that
But
the record is
so
complete.
stop right there. So stop right there.
I think you said exactly You know, there needs to be a set of records. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff
And who,
that's in the bond offering that needs to be, you know, that needs to be codified, kept in the records of the town, and the records, you know, go beyond. But as it relates to the financial treasurer stuff, you need to make sure that that's being maintained in the right place in the town and get it, and of course, be able to look at it.
Right.
so
So,
if there's
but
a record that's missing, who would you go to go get that record? Because they then are the ultimate owner of that record.
right, which is why
So
I
no, no,
don't
no, no,
think
no, no, no.
the
So who is that?
well, what I'm saying is, for anything Munis related, I would have to go
Devoid
to
of
and
systems. Let's say there's no systems. We're back to uh,
Well, if you wanted,
pen, pencil, books.
yeah, if you wanted to look at, you know, the cash or the cash records or
Hmm.
receivables or receivable records or, you know, if you're talking about treasurer flow of funds, if you wanted to look at, you know, what the spending was going to be, you'd have to go to,
the bank.
well, you have to, in the town, you'd have to go to the chief financial officer of the town and the chief financial officer of the school district because, you know, some of that stuff's there and
Right.
there's no access to the school record. So there's multiple places. But you know, you need to make sure that those records are there, as does other people probably. That's why the record retention policy is important.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So you don't
it's not
want
really just
re
one place. There's two sets of records, right? There's the
Mhm.
town, there's the Board of Ed, and at a minimum, somebody in the town should be making sure that Brian has the. I'm sure he does, but you know that he has a proper record retention policy.
Right. But let's say Brian, as an example, doesn't have or is not keeping records properly. Who is the authority that then has to be ensured that that's
Well, I would
enforced?
think if it was, I would think if it was in the treasury area, it'd be the treasurer. I would think if it was in the human resource area, it'd be the head of human resources. I would think, you know, each of whoever the top person in the town is in, you know, that particular area.
Okay. So Andrew, do you believe that to be the CFO or do you believe that to be the treasurer? I think what we're trying to establish here is that at least there's an ultimate owner or an ultimate person who has the responsibility to to be sure that these are all there, and they have the authority and the power to basically, if something is found to be missing, let's say during an audit, who would the auditor go to say, please go get that restored? Who has that authority? Is that the CFO? Is that you?
I would say if it's accounting related, it goes to the CFO. If it's bank related, like I give authority or access to the auditors for all of our bank accounts, for example. So I'd say if it's bank related, I am the person that they go to. If it's accounting system related, then they go to the CFO for that. Because like right now, I have read-only access in Munis. I have no ability to, which is by design, right? As part of dual control, you don't want the person
Hmm.
who is able to pay
Paying
out
for
funds also being able to adjust and cover their tracks in the accounting system. You want to have separation of duty or segregation of duties in that respect, which
I,
is why, again, I think it's a combination of both roles that ultimately, and the school district CFO, right, maintains the same for their munis system that I don't even have access to right now. So,
I
I
think I think the treasurer as custodian of the town funds shall ensure a record of all, because I mean, I'm not even sure it will keep. I'm not
Okay.
sure what that means. I think it shall ensure a record of all financial transactions made by the town, blah, blah, blah. The treasurer shall have access to all financial systems and records to ensure they're maintained.
How about that?
Yeah.
and it is consistent with state statute 7-80 that although that 7-80, which has been around, for eons, it does say keep a
Yeah,
record.
right.
that's where I got the language.
Yeah, no, I know.
But
Absolutely.
that's where the council has told me that the treasurer effectively keeps a record via the bank statements and the accounting system, which is why, again, I think maybe that needs to be, I don't know if that needs to be fleshed out somewhere or if everyone is comfortable operating under that interpretation of this language. Because what I don't want to see happen is the treasurer having to maintain a whole separate set of records from
This
these
doesn't
other
say that.
systems.
This just says this says that there's an ultimate owner of the keeper of the books. And who is that ultimate owner to make sure you don't enter, you don't have to create your own set of books, but this is basically saying who is the ultimate owner of the financial transactions of the town. There can be comptrollers, accounts payable clerks, there can be CFOs, there can be CFOs,
Right.
I
right?
mean,
Yeah.
it's just like I've been doing this for 50 years as it goes. Like I'm being stumped by this question here. But I mean, the tax records, for example, I mean, that's in the town, they would say and probably by statute, they would say that, they have to keep the records. They're the ultimate owner of the records. And the tax records are integral to the treasurer's job, as is um, so many other departments. That's why could we say keep or ensure that they're kept? I mean, just to go back to the state statute, because I'm not
Well,
sure.
the state
I'm not
statute says
sure.
we'll keep.
I'm not sure you can keep in today's environment. I mean, I
It's
don't know when they
arcane.
updated. I don't know
Just
when they
arcane.
updated that last,
Yeah.
but
1959, archaic.
Yeah.
when
1959 in the general statutes.
5/9.
59.
5-9.
Yeah.
Is when that statute was written. But I think that's why, like using the tax collector as an example, right? I don't have access to the tax collector system right now.
But I think we're going back and forth in terms of what you have and don't have. I really would ask that we sit back and say, what should a treasurer do? What should a treasurer have? What's a treasurer have because of state statute, right? Just to be sure.
Yeah,
Because let's say you win a Powerball and you're off to wherever.
right.
Someone else is coming. So, we want to be sure that the next person who takes this role understands that what the role is, what their obligations are and their powers are.
Yeah.
I can
That's all
assure
I
you
ask.
I can assure you that the treasurer before Andrew never kept the records. Okay.
Mhm.
That I can assure you. But at the same time, if someone's going to keep the records, there's as the state statute says, there's enormous amount of checks and balances and security and, keeping it on a computer that you'd have to put on top of that. So,
Retention, as you
so
said.
I would say I would say if you want to stay with the statute, keep or ensure they're kept, something like that.
Well, but I guess I would argue, right? They are kept today in that system, and they're kept
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
bank
No, I agree.
statements
Yeah.
as part of the bank statements. Um, so,
I don't
like
think
like maybe in 1959 they envisioned someone literally holding a piece of paper and putting it in their file cabinet, and that's how they kept the record,
For sure.
right? Today it's electronic.
right.
Um, So, but that's where I think that second line is important, that in order to ensure that the records are being kept properly, then I need to be able to do some kind of, even if it's not on a daily basis, some kind of periodic review of the different financial systems to ensure that the records are being kept.
Is there any
Um,
is there any reason the town treasurer has been not permitted access to the financial systems?
well, to be clear, I have access to the town munis, and I have access to our bank partners and brokerage partners where actual cash transactions are made.
Mhm.
Um, maybe Bill can talk to the Board of Ed side, but I did request access to their munis system and was essentially told that I would not be given that access, that I would need to make appointments and essentially only view things in person, which makes it a little bit more challenging to ensure that all the records are being kept.
Does
Um,
Does anybody else outside of the school district have access to the financial systems, i.e. the town CFO?
No.
No one.
Oh, actually, I mean, what Andrew said is 100% correct. But before Kathleen, you created the audit committee, no one had access. So I negotiated with Brian that this is not possible. We have to have access. And the process we set up with Andrew going over there and having the right to look at the checks and make sure that his signature's on the checks, make sure that there's supporting documentation, fundamentally a good set of book and record was that was something that was a negotiated settlement. And, had I stayed on the audit committee longer, we would have upped the game in that particular area. So we do for the first time in the history of the town, well, since ever they set up a separate board, have some access. And I'm not concerned that personally, I'm not concerned that there is not a good set of books and records. I think we're just debating the state statute. I think part of the problem here is the state statute is pretty old, right?
Yeah,
You know, and
yeah.
One
is not contemporary with today's technology.
one quick thing I would add though, I do want to make clear, I do get emails from the Board of Ed Finance Department with essentially a disbursement journal essentially of all the different transactions that are going out. So I am able to see the amounts and the names of vendors that are being paid. But if I want to look at any of the backup documents, right, look at the specific invoice that led to that payment, that's where it requires, I have to do it in person. Whereas on the town side, I can just queue in the information and go into the system myself at any time of day or night, 24/7 access to look at the underlying
Are
information.
you aware of any other towns that have a town treasurer that do have access to their school district's financial systems?
You know what? It's really not something I have asked my colleagues, at least in recent years. I'm not aware. Um, I know that some towns, though, they have merged finance department. Like in Stamford, their CFO or director of administration, as they call it, has access to all the financials of both the city and the schools because it's a merged department. So I think in towns that have merged or consolidated finance functions for both the town and the schools, they would be able to see everything in one place. Um, but yeah, I would need to do a study to and investigate and figure out, how do towns do this, in towns where they have separate finance departments for the town and the schools.
Yeah, I think for the most part, where they have separate finance departments, based upon my recollection, is when you have the same chief financial officer, it's sort of two positions with one person. So in theory, the Board of Ed is saying they still have their own,
Records.
and we were encouraging that model as well, except we were encouraging that the Board of Ed, we fold the town into the Board of Ed because they have more people.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, does the Board of Ed use the same system as the rest of the town?
Yes and no. They use a Munis system, but they use a different model of different versions, so they don't talk to each other by design.
Yeah, they have their own separate account set up, so they pay a separate fee to Munis. Essentially, we're paying two subscription fees, and the town has one subscription, and the Board of Ed has a different subscription, and the two there's a wall between the two, so one can't see into the other.
Interesting.
Which again, I was not consulted on that setup.
Okay.
No,
So-
that setup goes.
Yeah.
That's
It goes
way
way back.
I'm just
4 years.
curious. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Let's move on. Let's move on.
But I like the idea,
Let's
though,
move
of making it clear that the treasurer should have access to ensure that these records are being kept. I think that's an important responsibility that the records are kept.
all right, well,
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, Jen, was there a section 4 that
No,
was deleted?
Jen
Okay.
took out there was a section 4 that then got mixed in, so I couldn't count that day. So
No, no problem.
apologies.
No problem. No worries.
Okay, so let's go to bond execution and investment of town funds. Any comments?
Just the general statute should be an ISHCAP.
Yep. Okay. Bill?
No, good.
7?
I asked Andrew about shall make the town treasurer will make a sworn annual investment report, and I just wondered about that word. Sworn by whom?
So you think that word sworn should be taken
Yeah,
out?
you just make an annual investment report. I don't know what sworn means
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
great.
don't remember where that came from.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Um,
Because right now I effectively do quarterly ones, so it would be simple for me to make an annual one after all 4 quarters are done. Um,
Okay.
I
The
think,
How
yeah,
about people who would receive it?
board of selectmen, board of finance, audit
Audit.
committee, and town council. Yeah, I mean, I
who
guess
you give to now, right?
what's that?
That's who you provide
Well,
that.
I currently I've never been invited to present financial updates to the Board of Selectmen. I generally have only been going to Board of Finance and Town Council, and then the Audit Committee when they have requested, when Bill was there, they would ask me for certain financial updates. I've not been asked since Bill left to give a
Well, it just
financial
says that
update.
you'll make a report. It doesn't say you have to stand up and present it.
Right, I guess it will be
Maybe
provided, so
provide.
it could be emailed to them.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
about instead of make, change that to provide?
Oh, okay. Will provide. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think
Well,
that makes sense.
the first sentence there, the town treasurer will provide an annual report. Yeah, and then so the town treasurer will provide an annual report at the end of the fiscal year, small f, to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, Audit Committee, and the Town Council. And I think then the next sentence, there's a word missing. The treasurer shall review. Something's missing there. The treasurer shall review blank and the annual comprehensive annual financial report of the town. Audit board reports prior.
So I believe, Andrew, there was a dialogue that we had regarding there is an annual report that's made to the town of the town and audit board, and then it's submitted to the state you were talking about?
The ACFR is a report that, yes, the CFO puts together. Um, and Bill, I know that the audit committee does receive that report. I don't know, does the audit committee approve? One question that came up when we were doing this was
That's right.
who is responsible for approving that report, or does it not? I would think it would need to be approved.
Well,
Um,
I mean, to be truthful with you, I think the town records are silent on this. I think that, which is absolutely absurd, that the CFO can file the report without anybody's approval. I don't think that's the way, it certainly hasn't been working that way since the audit committee was formed. But I think we, maybe not here, but somewhere else we should. But I think the treasurer should be required to review the report before it's submitted to the state.
I don't get that. I just, I mean, what does that mean? Review, what teeth I mean, don't you do that anyway? Are you saying you don't see it?
Well,
no,
I'm
no, no,
saying is that I bet you, I mean, for the 35 years before Andrew was the treasurer, I'm sure they never reviewed the report.
Right. But I mean, that's just sort of a thing. Do you review it now?
I do review it, yes.
Yeah. So
But I don't necessarily get, I don't hold the
this doesn't
pen.
say approve. This just says you could review it, right?
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
this.
Well, I think that was the discussion was should the treasurer or should the audit committee should town council maybe should someone be approving that reporting?
Well,
That
I
doesn't-
think the town council, well, I mean, leave the Kathleen, she's got more experience, but certainly the town council,
It receives
what
it.
the
You
directives it
receive it.
goes to,
You receive it.
they accept
it.
them. But
You receive it.
yeah,
That's it. It doesn't ask. You don't. It's not required to approve. It's just receipt.
yeah. shall review, yeah. And I guess, I mean, I guess if for me, it's not, if you ask somebody to review something, they have input, you're supposed to take your input, but I mean, I don't know whether we want to put that in here, you know?
No.
No.
So, Andrew, do you review this today?
I do review it, but I will say sometimes I'm brought in kind of very towards like late in the process of that review. I know that various feedback points that the audit committee had made in prior years I was on board with, and some of those changes are no longer in the latest version. Um, and so that's kind of where I do think there needs to be some kind of controls over that,
Yeah.
where
So,
if, you know, I
just
don't know what those should be, but I think that's where we just wanted to have a conversation about that report. You know, for example, residents come to me asking, you know, what are the top, you know, payments, you know, or like how much should we pay the top 10 vendors last year? And that you can't find that information in the ACFR. And I think that would be valuable information for the public to be aware of.
is it required?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know if it's required. I know that that report is typically put together based on, I know that there are certain accounting rules in GASB that require certain things to be in that report. There's also, um, uh, I believe, um,
There's an MD&A, a management discussion and analysis in the
Yeah.
report. And there's a
Right.
new rule that says that needs to be, we have one because, you know, we've been ahead. But there's a new rule that says all towns will need one in 2027. And it's supposed to be more robust. So, but I think I think you would want the treasurer to review the report, you know, review the report in draft form to provide input. I don't know how you write this, opposed to review it after it's filed.
Yeah.
So
So
that's all
just
I'm getting. And that's different. And you know, I would say the treasurer should be a person who reviews something a little bit as part of the preparation process. I mean, don't overdo it. I think different, the town council should review it before it's filed, you know. Wouldn't expect the town council, but the town council should review drafts. I mean, they shouldn't just review the one as filed copy.
So recall that we had this group actually heard from the CFO who went through this process, and it was kind of a concern about bottlenecking, where there's a certain date, and correct me if I've got this wrong. No, you're waving.
You got it exactly right. I didn't express my comments that day, and I probably don't want to do it right now on that either. I mean,
Okay, but my understanding is that this report, the financial reports and so forth that have, need to be submitted as of X date, when you have to take that and actually have an approval, and I think I pointed out to the CFO at that point that it's not an approval, it's actually a receipt of that report, and there is a timeline, and they can be all put together and so forth, so that there isn't a bottleneck along the way, and that's what the CFO had expressed was concerning to them in terms of getting that process in by a certain date.
yeah,
And
but that's
if you
that
have
is
to, I think that could be a problem. If it's as simple
I
as
I,
what I understand it to be, and when I served on the town council, it was you receive it just like you do as the audit committee of a corporation. You receive the report. You're not receiving the draft from the auditors along the way. It's here's the report. Uh,
it can't be that the only person responsible for the report is the CFO. It
No,
has to
no,
be.
it goes along the way, but it doesn't require a gate check, if you will.
No, but
Uh,
so for example, at a minimum, okay, somebody, I mean, you know, when you were the CEO and every other board you've served on, there's somebody who signs off on the financial statements besides the CFO.
Correct.
And here in the town, given the independence of the Board of Finance, appointed or elected, they ought to read it at a minimum, sign off on it,
Of
you
course
know.
you read it. Yes, of
And
course.
then the question you're raising is, you know, there are you know, a third of the towns, or you know, maybe it's 27% of the towns that file their reports late. But including Wilton, is 2 years late. But that can't be the standard by which we operate. I mean, it's 6 months to you have 6 months to file a report to be on time, and it's a process issue rather than a substantive issue. The timing of it,
But I do think we had somewhat of a consensus of that thing needs to be approved by someone prior to submission to the state. That we did agree. And if I recall, the biggest bottleneck was the Board of Ed, in terms of their timing with their financial reports, is what she said. Yeah.
Oh, the
The
60-day
Board of
thing.
Ed, the Board of Ed is not a bottleneck at all. The Board of Ed is
Their financial statements, they said.
the Board of Ed, the biggest, the so-called bottleneck
Mhm.
statute. I mean, it's not a bottleneck. It's a statute that requires the books and fundamentally the payable accounts to be held open for 90 days.
Right.
And the reason being is they want to make sure you get all of last year's appropriation and expenditure.
Right. You accrue
Right.
everything that you properly did. I agree.
But that's not a bottleneck. You close everything else up, you wait 90 days, and you find the last check that, I mean, first of all, why would there be a check that wasn't recorded anyway? But should you find one, you just book it in. So I mean, that was just
Okay.
that's just.
You're saying that the report bill can be started before, those things come in, any last remaining payments.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the report is the report. You're just writing it, and the numbers. It's just.
Yeah, I
The
think
whole
there
thing
was
about the auditors is, the auditors, they get paid so little, they don't want to come in and do too much interim work. I mean, it's just this is a system issue. It's not a substantive issue.
okay. So back to the sentence. So, Andrew, what would you like to do with this sentence? The treasurer shall review the annual comprehensive financial report of the town prior to submission to the state.
I think it's fine the way it is, just the way it's drafted there.
Well, and I see you've removed audit reports.
Well, do you want to add audit reports back?
What is an
Well,
audit
Well, the
report?
only thing that's submitted to the state is the financial statements.
I don't know
Well,
what
I'm
an audit board report is. What are you talking about?
sorry, well, I think they're changing
Yeah,
audit
no, I
committee to
know.
an audit
That's fine. But
board.
what is it? What is an audit board report?
So it's my understanding that there are, and again, maybe that's not the right naming convention, but there are reports that get submitted to the state around New Canaan's audit each year, and any issues that got identified. So I think the idea was we just want to make sure the treasurer is receiving essentially all the reports that are, even the ones that don't go to the state, frankly, but all the reports that get generated relating to the finances of the town, the treasurer should be a recipient of. Um, I
Okay.
think that was why that was there.
Okay.
There are,
So why don't we do this?
there
Why
are
don't we do this?
other reports that are drafted, that are prepared, that are filed with the state, for some, I forget exactly, but maybe the library fund or the
Yeah.
conservation fund or different things of that nature. And so I mean, I think I think all officers of the town should have access to that. But certainly the treasurer shall review the annual comprehensive financial report of the town and other related reports
How
prior
about other related financial reports?
yeah, other related financial reports. Yep.
Okay, so let's say I'm the CFO. I was the CFO at one point, and let's say I submitted the comprehensive annual financial report to the town treasurer for their review. Am I supposed to wait for their comments? And what if I get like, gee, these 5 paragraphs need to be changed in the annual comprehensive financial report? What am I supposed to do about that?
Well, I would think the same thing you do in business is you sit down, you consult, you talk about it, but at the end of the day, the CFO is the person responsible for filing it.
Correct. Is that understood? Is
Well,
that understood?
I would
Yeah.
think so. I would think so.
Or does the
I
town
can't
treasurer
cover.
have to, right, exactly. So my point is that somebody is ultimately responsible. And if I'm the CFO, I say to the
Yeah,
town,
no, I think
thank
there's,
thank you
you
very
know,
much for your 10 comments and changes and so forth. I mean, there's got to be a line where you just say, thank you very much. And there's a timing issue that I, as a CFO, am
right.
responsible for. And I think if you put something like this in the charter, whoever serves as the town treasurer can say, well, wait a minute, I didn't have a chance to review that. And you're not supposed to submit this to the state. This gets into, sort of the hair that is involved with this kind of thing. And ultimately, yes, we're sending it to the treasurer, we're sending it to the Board of Finance, we're sending it to the audit committee, we're sending it to the town council. And there's a window, and please submit your responses and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's the CFO who decides what's going to go in.
Well, I guess I would, I agree with everything you said, but at the end of the day, if, let's say all those bodies said, no, 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 this
Yeah.
belongs
Well,
to.
of course, that's going to be obviously, as a manager, you say, oh, okay, all these, but at some point, how does this, when you codify it in the charter, I can understand where, CFO says, okay, this says review. Does it say approve? Nope. So I'm trying to be fair to every side.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, but the flip side is you're 100% correct. But I think right now what happens is I think in a lot of people's minds, the CFO can just file it whenever she wants. And I guess, you've been on the town council and all these different roles, Board of Finance and everything. It seems to me that somebody besides the CFO, I
Well,
mean, we had a CFO, we
and
had
the
a
first
CFO
selectman.
for seven years that had material weaknesses, before you formed the audit committee.
Well,
Sorry.
isn't the goal of this though, there's no approval process, right? If
There's
the
no approval process. That's the problem.
right.
No one's the problem is no one's responsible for anything.
Left in the kitchen.
I mean,
Yes, they
people
are
have
responsible. I mean, CFO and the
people
board.
have personal, we have a lot of good employees and they have they feel personally responsible in terms of what's written into the charter.
They are responsible. They
Pardon me?
are responsible.
Who is?
The person who submits it, they're responsible for this.
They're responsible, but can someone submit a report on the town without I mean, if the answer is yes, that's fine. Okay. And I think the answer is yes, to be truthful, based upon what's written here. But if
It's
can
it's
the CFO file a document that, says the town is failing in its financial processes and systems without approval of the Board of Finance or the town council? I mean,
well, again, it's review by, and again, it's how a CFO operates in any institution, right? Are they the lone person out there? No, there is a review process. There's a discussion process, but under this language, you just this is a lot of this is just good management, as you have said in the past. It's leadership, right? Right? I mean, it's
I
how we
agree.
normally
I,
operate. Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. It is leadership. We shouldn't have to write this in here,
No.
but to be truthful with you, we heard the CFO say she should have that power to file it without anybody approving it. That's what she
That is
said.
true. She doesn't, there is no approval on that document.
There never has been, but there has been a process that goes through, and that shouldn't change, I don't think, or unless you're saying there should be an approval by a certain body. It's a review process.
Well, I think that look, I haven't gone back more than 10 years, all I'm saying is that the financial statements prepared by the CFO should go to the town council or the Board of
It
Finance.
does, and it does.
They give them a week or 2 days or to read it and say, is this something we can file on behalf of the town of New Canaan? I mean, because the CFO is not even a resident of the town. So if the town council say, Kathleen, you know this, I'm preaching to the choir, this case, and is those prepared and according, do you have all the sign offs you need, et cetera, et cetera? And yes, it is. Okay, go ahead and file it. I mean, it should be that. I don't want to call it, but that's nowhere, that's not required anywhere.
Right.
Nowhere.
It's true.
And in fact, it's just not required. And it should be. I mean, Kathleen,
So, let's,
we did it as an audit committee, but it was not because the charter or the ordinances say we should do it. We just did it because it was good hygiene, you know?
absolutely,
Yeah.
correct, absolutely.
But
So
I think what
let's,
happens
may I,
sometimes people
may I suggest, yeah, let's
people
just
take
make
the
sure.
absence of words and say, well, see that I don't have to do that. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah. Well, I
know,
hope that doesn't
yeah.
happen. But if we can just go and take a look at where, I mean, this is required submissions by every town. And let's just understand what the process is for other towns as well. I'm not
Okay.
saying it's just right or wrong, but
So Andrew, we'll get some guidance from you on, we'll go look at, I think it was what?
let's get the CFO to also put
Yeah,
their
yeah.
input in it too. Yeah.
We'll find the other town that has some charter articles. How about it? So we can keep moving.
Yeah, if you want to
The
put a
problem
comment in
is,
there
as
to put
problem is,
like a
many of
parking
the
lot.
towns don't have many of the towns. I
They
mean,
all have to do this.
we probably,
The
yeah, but
annual comprehensive financial report, everybody has to submit that.
yeah, but I'm just saying that, I think we're a little more, the audit committee, the ethics board, and all. I think we're a little more sophisticated, and
Oh, no question. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
let's go through that process. Okay, disbursement of funds. And that there's just the gender there on the last sentence, whether he pays the same or not. The
So
disbursement,
that
yeah,
first sentence is something that I
that's
thought was
state statute.
important. I'm sorry.
That's state statute, correct?
No, well,
No,
there's nothing in the statutes that says that the treasurer is a signer on the accounts, but I think it's implied, which is why, I am a signer on all the accounts because I'm the one who's making the payments officially on record, right? Even if other people are assisting me in prepping those payment files and submitting them so that the transactions happen, I'm ultimately the person whose name is on the payment. So, and in talking with the couple current audit committee members, they also felt strongly that the treasurer absolutely should be a signer on all the accounts. So I thought codifying that, since it isn't explicitly stated in the statutes, might make sense. Just again, it hasn't been an issue in the past, but I wouldn't want to have an issue where, I mean, and unfortunately, well, let me take that back. Under a former finance director years ago, I did discover that there were accounts being opened where I was not being added as a signer, and that was an issue. Um, as the person who's ultimately responsible for the payments, that go out the door.
Oh, it was an issue to it was an issue to the audit committee, and also that's the same person who used to work for Wilton.
Right.
I mean, certainly at a minimum, there needs to be I mean, no one should be able to open an account unless you got to go through all hoops and processes and approvals. So just keeping with the treasurer makes sense.
Well, it does say it in the language. It's just again archaic, but it says that the treasurer shall pay out on the order of proper authority.
yeah,
And
the
you're just saying,
disbursements, yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
enhance it.
disbursements, yeah, but
Yeah,
not the bank account signer one.
yeah. Well, payouts come from banks, right? So I agree. Yeah, I just think
But you
we're
can
just
do payouts without being the signer on the account because you can
correct,
approve them, right?
correct.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with that language. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Second sentence, the town treasurer with the assistance of the finance department shall keep a record of all town orders presented for payment. Uh,
I think this language, Jen, if I recall, you copied this in from a statute.
yep, we took this from a statute.
And I know that it's very similar to the conversation we had above around, you know, the record keeping
it is.
piece.
It is. Yep.
I think that, so I don't know if it's duplicating that. I think the only area where it's potentially not duplicating is it's saying keeping a record of orders for payment, whether they get paid or not, right? Now,
Correct.
technically, ultimately, an order, I believe, I'm not aware of an order not getting paid unless it's one where I have put the stop sign up and said, hold on a second, I don't see the right approvals, which again, I've had to do over the years. Years ago, under a former finance director, I had to stop payments from going out um, because they had not been made on the order of proper authority. Um, so I guess here, though, I'm just wondering
So should we take out, since we've gotten better with the top one, take out the second sentence?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because
Everyone
I
okay
feel
with
like
that?
it's overlapping a bit. But what I liked about this version was it talked about assistance with the finance department, right? Like it shows that it's multiple people who are responsible for gathering financial records, and then it's really the treasurer's job to ensure that they are actually being kept. And again, whatever process I have to do that, is my process, right? Where I go into Munis and I double check things, right? Like I'm checking to make sure we're keeping those records, and then I have access to all the bank statements.
Okay, but
Okay.
you're not keeping the record. I just removed
Right.
that sentence. I'd remove that sentence.
Okay, so let's do the last one.
Yeah. Um, on this one, Andrew and I spoke about this, if the treasurer cannot perform their duties due to temporary absence or is incapacitated, I would suggest that if you're incapacitated, likely you're unable to deputize a temporary town treasurer. So I think that it's not necessarily the treasurer who's deputizing it, but it's somebody with authority to do so in the absence of the town treasurer. If you're unable, for instance, Andrew, to do something, it's necessary because you're incapacitated. You're also going to be unable to deputize your second in command, if you will.
Right.
So why don't we remove incapacitated, but allow Andrew to deputize somebody so that at least the payments can go out, right? Let's say he goes on a 3-week vacation, right? And there's the payment run for that month happening, and then treat incapacitated in a different way.
Or I would say first selectman or board of selectmen or CFO. I mean, you can't be frozen. I'm just worried about, not to suggest that the treasurer couldn't do this, and under state statutes they can name an assistant treasurer. That's right, Andrew?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they call it a deputy
deputy.
treasurer. Yep.
Right.
Right.
So you can do that even before you're incapacitated.
Right. I could do that at any time I could
Yeah.
appoint a deputy treasurer.
Without
I've
the
Yeah.
I've elected
without the
not to.
without
Yeah,
the approval of the town, without the approval of the town council.
correct. I have sole appointment authority of a deputy treasurer. Um,
It's
I've
almost,
just
I would say, a good practice to actually have that identified now. In my absence, this person would be deputized as an assistant, for the time being until I come back.
Yeah, well, and I want you to know, as part of this, I mean, that's the beauty of this process that we're looking at all these things. I've already started making that short list of people that I would consider deputizing, and obviously, I would need to reach out and interview them and see if they would be open or interested. But I've already started that process of having that,
Wouldn't
thought
it?
through.
Wouldn't you think about just having it being an existing employee I just out of simplicity, out of say the finance department, the comptroller or something?
I'm considering that, but I also the only concern I would have there is because I'm very, I want to make sure we have an independent set of eyes and review.
Well,
That's
sure. I mean,
where,
it's a temporary thing, but it's not something that, to see, if you go somewhere outside of the finance ecosystem right now for a temporary reason, I mean, that's a long process. They're not elected, et cetera. And I just think we're relying on the finance department to do a lot of what we're doing. And on a temporary basis, if the treasurer is unable to do something like sign checks, there should be somebody else who can do that
yeah, no,
temporarily until the next election or whatever. But it's just we ought to think about that as a town. Just if you don't want to be put in that situation where suddenly things can't go out because the town treasurer is incapacitated.
right. No, I mean
I
and I
think
guess I've wondered though, is there any standard language in the charter that talks about other positions where, like, like I know for town clerk there is an assistant town
There's
clerk that they
assistant.
can go
But
to.
that's an employee of the town already.
Right, which is
They're
an
already
employee of the town.
identified. That's why when
Right,
I put this language together, you are a single contributor in that sense of your own elected ability.
right.
So there has to be some sort of ability to deputize somebody. I mean, even at the bank, you had to go away for 2 weeks at a minimum. Someone else, you deputized
Right.
them. They did your job, actually
Well,
even
and I
with the
just want you all to know,
control.
even when I travel,
Right.
I've never quote taken a vacation from this job because I don't
That's
have
you.
a
That's
backup.
you. That's you.
Right, right.
I think we need to think about that as a town.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree.
I think
Sorry,
when we,
Bill.
I think when we, CRC talks about how long someone's appointed and things of that nature, I realize it's a selected position. We should. I mean, I wouldn't want a temporary treasurer for 3 years, right? Or two
Right.
years, right? So I think we should sort of, if he's incapacitated, you have a temporary treasurer. We should think about that more broadly. Um, but I'm not sure who I would pick. I'm a little concerned about the finance department because it is so small and it does jump out at you. What about checks and balances? But
Well,
there are some other
you
people,
know,
for
yeah.
example, you could go to maybe a member of the audit committee,
Well,
Right.
since the town
or you
council
could go
here,
to member of the
if
board
there
of
is
finance,
election,
member of the
yeah.
board of finance, and it has to be somebody who's knowledgeable about checks and balances and signing and stuff. And there's probably other people in town as well, and there may be somebody in the finance as well. But I'm just, you
Yeah,
know,
and I was thinking, Bill, of like another official of the town, like, because I do think it needs to be a New Canaan resident. I mean, it kind of goes back to why I strongly believe it needs to be an independently elected role, is because no one else in the finance department today is a New Canaan resident, and I'm uncomfortable having no one who actually is, living here and might suffer the consequences of an incorrect payment being made would be making that decision, even in a temporary situation, which is why, deputizing a board of finance member, but that's where I would need to make sure that
it'd
we're
even
not
be someone.
violating the charter
Yeah.
where it says you can't have more than one position. We would need to be careful about that. That's, something to
It
consider
might be a
too.
good thing to actually, at some point, maybe someone in the Board of Education, because I think the more we can do together, the more chance we can build trust to actually, bring these departments together. But anyway, we don't need to solve for that.
But we're
Yeah.
all in vehement agreement. We need this article.
Yeah.
This yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So so we have temporary. I see this in stages. Temporary absence. Andrew goes on a 4-week cruise, has a great time. Checks have to go out, right? In the banking world, I deputized somebody who was my deputy, right? They did all my functions. They actually acted thanks to Nicholas Leeson as a check. Then we have the incapacitated route. Andrew can't function, you
It's,
know,
it becomes vacant, basically.
and basically he's now become vacant. And the town council will appoint an interim treasurer who will serve until the next municipal election. And then,
Yes.
of course, the state statute was pretty clear to remove a town treasurer in sort of the elected capacity that we have now, that there is a very specific general statute which we'll put in there once we finish this discussion on that. The removal is quite complex from what I've
Right.
read.
I think it requires a judge. It requires effectively committing some kind of crime.
And
I
that's
think,
normally
or
because there's a crime.
right, like being found guilty of some kind of crime can lead
Yep.
to the removal, which makes sense. Um, and again, I point out the reason why I thought the town council would be the appropriate body to appoint an interim treasurer is because ultimately, again, because the treasurer should be independent of town, of the reporting line into the first selectman. I didn't think the first selectman or board of selectmen should be the appointing authority for a role that's really meant to kind of provide a check on them and because they're the purchasing agent, right? So I do think it should be a different body that's determining the appointment of an interim treasurer that would serve until the next election.
That I think that makes sense in my
Yeah.
point. But okay, so it sounds like we have a little bit of work to do on this. Andrew, if you don't mind, we'll get together and then do some cleanup and then submit it back to group 2. And
Sure.
then, and if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah, and I know you can't, I'm happy to meet individually with folks if that helps facilitate redlining more. But I think a lot of the stuff that's been cut out is good to help consolidate the language more, because I know, Kathleen, that was a concern of yours that there is just too much. So we'll continue to wordsmith and fine tune this. But but I'm happy to help in any way I can. And I'll do some research too on some of the other questions we've discussed that maybe aren't charter, I guess, specific, or but maybe should be thought through.
Right. But I think we have the right framework with the right sections, and now we just need to tweak the language a bit to be able to get this to the wider group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we put just a pin a calendar date on that when we can get it to the broader group, like within the next week?
Yeah, I think why not?
Should we, after we do another round of wordsmithing, would you like to meet as a small group to review that version before it goes to the wider group?
It's going to the full group anyway for edits and so forth, so I'd rather not delay it.
Okay.
Yeah. Andrew, shall we get it out to everybody? Should we aim for the 24th?
That's Tuesday.
Tuesday.
We can try.
Okay.
Well, I guess my question is, do you plan to discuss this at your Tuesday meeting next week, or are you discussing other? I know you had a lot of
We have a
other
lot to
agenda
do. We
items.
have a lot to do.
We can,
We're not-
but
we're not
I want to
just
get
gonna
this to
do-
everybody for at least they have at least a week before
Yeah.
we go another meeting.
I see. Before the
Stew on this.
31st.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Kathleen is the aggregator. She's making the salad. So I want at least you probably won't be able to do this, but have this ready for her to push out after the next meeting.
Gotcha. Yeah. I'm happy to work with you.
Okay.
And I think if we can get something out sometime next week, I don't know if I can do exactly by Tuesday, but certainly by the end of next week, I think we can.
Okay.
We'll be in a
Perfect.
position to share something. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Because I do want to take the time to make some phone calls to other treasurers. I'm curious to ask
Yeah.
about the financial records piece, right, with the Board of Ed and the town. I would like to make some calls and kind of gather some input from other town treasurers.
Okay.
Great.
Excellent. And thank you for your partnership on building this together. I think that,
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think again, it's a great idea to have it be its own section. So thank you.
And Jennifer, just a question. Did you say, I think I saw in your email, an earlier email, you've also shared this with Anne and Diane?
I wanted us to meet first. Now I will share this with Anne and Diane. I did share with Anne and Diane the sections that we went through, that Diane and I went through, and that we had reviewed with Anne as well. So I hadn't heard first opinions, first blush.
Okay.
All of you could have told us we were nuts. Forget it. Don't put this out there, don't want to waste Anne's time,
Right.
especially. So after we get this tweaked, I will also send it to them as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, and sorry, are you talking about the treasurer article, or are you talking about, because I know you had a meeting where you went through a different article with the CFO, but you're talking about the treasurer article.
Yes, the treasure article with them. And
Okay.
then I wanted Anne and Diane. Anne was not present. She was on vacation, but Diane and Anne, to be sure, before I shared out the Article 5 that they worked on for the Department of Finance, that they were comfortable with the edits that were made, similar like we did here. And then once I get their okay, which I'm giving them a deadline, I will then share it out with the wider audience. So I
Of
just
the-
want to be sure that
of the
what we
finance
talked
department.
about, yes, we talked
Okay.
about reflected what that conversation was.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I'm also happy to review and opine on that one too.
You will get
given
that one
I
as soon as,
interact with them. Okay.
yep, you will get that
And-
one as soon as they say, yep, that's what we meant. You reflected it accurately. That's what I said. This is what the changes we wanted made, etc.
Okay. And
Similar
then
to
for,
what
for
we're
the
going to do
treasurer,
here. We'll get that in its place, and then we'll share it out more widely.
yeah, I was going to say if we could first do that additional wordsmithing based on today before we send a version out to folks to react to, that would be
This is
great.
why the annual comprehensive financial report doesn't get done on time. We have everything is concurrent, so let's not make toll gates that can't. We got to move this forward. So
Let's okay. Well, thanks, Andrew. Appreciate your time. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, but just to confirm,
I gotta go, so I'm gonna sign off. And
We
I,
can shut that
I-
in. We have a 10:25.
Yeah.
thank you.
All right.
We
Andrew,
need
stay
a couple,
on.
we need a couple of minutes just amongst ourselves. Okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Very good. Andrew, I'll catch up with you and we'll set a date, but definitely we need to get it done. Okay?
yeah, no, and we can share that version out. Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Hopefully sooner than later. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
So, Jennifer, I'd like to make a motion. We officially end the meeting. and
Adjourn. Okay.
So I guess we can stop.
Kathleen seconded. Okay.
Stop record. Yeah.
Motion is adjourned. Meeting's adjourned.
Okay.
And I will take us off